So, hi Jen, really great to spend some time with you today. So, we're going to be talking about apprenticeships and how apprentices can proactively manage their own mental health and well-being and build resilience throughout their apprenticeship programs. I know that we're going to be talking about some of the structured resources that are available, but also sharing practical advice and personal insights based on the work that we've done with our apprentices to date. So I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into this. I'm going to start with a question for you. So what is resilience and why does it matter during an apprenticeship?
Thank you. Yeah, so it's a juicy topic and we can delve into so many areas of it. But in its simplest form, resilience is about how we respond and recover from setbacks that we might face in all aspects of life. So it's thinking about our ability to adapt and respond to things that come our way that might throw us slightly off course, be a challenging experience, and having sort of the mechanisms in place in order to be able to respond to them, move forward, and actually take learnings. Something that's really, really important that I think we often don't realize is that resilience, it's like a muscle. So we need to build it, we need to practice it. It's not something that we necessarily have. So although it might sound counterproductive, sometimes the more challenges we face, the stronger our resilience will be. We're putting ourselves in new environments, in new situations, which means we can take learning and we can understand, how we can better respond to things. There is an author and a doctor called Bill Mitchell he's written a book on time to breathe, which is all about, that responsiveness to situations. And he sets it out in a really nice way. And he talks around resilience almost being our own personal system of building blocks. So, what do we need in order to be able to build our resilience and take on challenges or situations that we might feel uncomfortable in? And the idea around this is it's things like building our self-belief, so having that trust in ourselves. It's about having optimism about when things arise, how we deal with them. It's about some self-awareness of how we control our emotions to situations. And we'll go into detail about that as to how our response to things can change. It's making sure you've got social support. So, you've got that communication piece, but you've got a network that is supporting you in whatever you might be going through, and particularly on an apprenticeship, which we'll also talk about. And then equally problem solving. We need a way forward through these things. So in terms of why it matters and why it matters for an apprenticeship, on an apprenticeship, you're in a completely new world. You are, you're there for a reason to gain a certification, to learn new technical skills, to build your career, advance yourself both professionally and personally. With that comes new challenges. You're put in a situation that you might not have been in before. You are facing, new technical learning. You are within a group of people that you may have a couple of colleagues. If timings align, you'll be with new people. You're stepping into the unknown of gaining something to better yourself. So having the resilience and building these skills means that you're not at the first sign of adversity, the first sign of a challenge, so some technical learning on your level 4 green belt, something you may never have encountered, but you've got that support from your trainer, you've got the support of your peers around you, and using that system to help learn, grow, develop, is only going to enhance your resilience and keep building it. So ultimately, having resilience, and especially within an apprenticeship, is meaning that we can move forward, we can gain, we can take new opportunities, and offer ourselves the kindness around that. Because if we're not set on serving ourselves, taking care of ourselves, when we do get deadlines, when we do get tasks, when we do get faced with a piece of content that we might find particularly tricky to understand, if we're not in a place where we're supported and our well-being is intact, that can easily help, lead to spiraling into overwhelm, stress, and actually avoidance altogether. So yes, there's a mass there, but hopefully, there's some key pieces there which capture what it is.
Great. So, there's a clear case for being aware of and investing in the building of resilience to support an apprenticeship journey. And the things that you've talked about, yes, they're important during an apprenticeship. They're also important life skills, aren't they?
Absolutely. And I think as well, that's something to bear in mind when we are on an apprenticeship. We are there to learn technical knowledge, to gain skills in that respect, but we are also, as I've mentioned, developing ourselves personally. So what you might gain from an education perspective is going to then serve you in all aspects of your life. And I think just as human beings, it's a core skill in order to grow and develop.
Yeah, brilliant. So, can you talk us through some of the common stressors involved in an apprenticeship and how we might spot early signs of overwhelm?
Yeah, of course. And I think as well, something in terms of resilience, as I touched on then, the fundamental piece is making sure that you are taking care of yourself. So it's looking after your well-being. And I think it's also worth noting that stress affects us all. It's a very, very natural human response. We have a stress response. We have chemicals that move through our body. And without going into too much detail, acute stress is very, very normal. It's a healthy part, as I said, for our nervous system to move through different levels of how we would respond to situations. When we move into chronic stress, so we've got persistent worries, that is when we need to start think about how it can impact our overall health and how we can understand, moving through that. That idea of being in chronic stress can be quite damaging to our health and our nervous system. So we can often operate in fight or flight, and that is often a point where we think, okay, we're moving into a realm of overwhelm here. We all get moments of overwhelm. We all get moments of worry and things going wrong. But the core part here, before we move into those common stressors, is thinking about what can we do to equip ourselves so that when we're faced with those situations, we're able to maybe not bounce back, but we're able to come back in a way that means we can actually take that learning, we're not compromising our own health, and we're being present to sort of everything that might be going on. So although we're talking about this in the context of an apprenticeship, the undercurrent and the underlying foundation is you as an individual and how you are supporting yourself so that you can get that amazing distinction that you might be after, that you can get that certification and move forward. So that said, park that. Common stressors that will often be things, that will start to just have that little hum of the stress building, could be when you are starting an apprenticeship, you are handed a wealth of incredible information, resources, tools, timelines, timing plans. Your diary gets filled with all your training, all brilliant assets. But that immediately can give a sense of, there's a lot to go through here. How is that going to sit side by side my current job? What do those deadlines, time pressures look like? So having the awareness of that is a great starting point, but it's just something to be mindful of what your interpretation of that looks like. It could then move into that increasing workload as you move through, can be a stressor. Something I can very much relate to personally, and we have learners that we work with one-to-one on this, your own expectations on yourself. So often people embarking on an apprenticeship, it's your own motivator that brings you to this position. You're wanting to improve your skills, improve your knowledge. You want to do well. I think we all do when we put ourselves into these environments. We want to get it right. So sometimes when we're challenged and we don't, how we speak to ourselves, that inner narrative, can also be a sign if that knocks us, shall we say. And then a couple of other things. If things don't go to plan, it's common stresses can be just noticing what those triggers are, noticing if something is throwing you slightly off course. It could be that you've got your work week planned, that your training is happening on a Wednesday, and then something throws into that. Either the training has to move, or you've got a work project that lands on the same day, and you need to navigate what that looks like. Excuse me. So all of those aspects are just tiny moments of where your resilience can come into play as to how you will adapt and overcome to keep you on that straight and narrow. Final two things in terms of common stresses. You are putting yourself out of your comfort zone, which is an extremely healthy thing to do. It's an extremely positive thing to do in terms of your personal and professional growth. But people don't necessarily know you. You're gaining new skills that might not be where your natural, path is. So just thinking about, that could be a stressor because it's not familiar. You're wanting to move forward, but you're moving into a place that isn't natural to you. So that can be a stressor. And then in tandem with that is the fact that you're in an environment with new people. So it's building those relationships and, the comfort of work colleagues or, personal life. You can perhaps adapt when things get tough in that environment. That you've got that support network, whereas you're building a new one within an apprenticeship. So that can be a little bit of a stressor as well.
So lots of opportunities to learn, to grow, but also opportunities that can push us too far into stress so that we become overwhelmed. And it would be good to now explore a little bit about what we can do to stop ourselves from getting into that overwhelmed position and stay in that healthy place of, yes, I'm flexing my muscles here, but I'm not straining and, putting myself out of action, so to speak.
Of course, yeah, and there's a very fine line, isn't there, where you want to push yourself, and I think again, just human nature, we often want to be seen to be coping, to be managing, to be juggling everything and being able to do it all, and I think it's also just being mindful of those signs of overwhelm where you're feeling it yourself. So you're starting to, be in more of a regular state of feeling nervous or feeling worried, struggling to switch off. And that idea of you struggle to switch off, yet you're not necessarily getting through what you need to because there's a lot of juggling and multitasking and, just trying to stay on top of everything. So all of those aspects are just worth observing within yourself and just noticing if things start to shift, if there's a change in your behavior or you actually feel the physical stress. So in your mind you think you can manage it all, but physically, if your breathing gets a bit heavier, if you have that sinking tummy feeling, these are all signs to just observe and be aware of. But to manage that, we come back to again where we started at the beginning, taking care of yourself. So ultimately this is looking after your well-being so that everything above that can be done in the best of your ability, in the best way. And it's building that resilience skill, as we keep talking about. So it's thinking about your support system or your support toolkit. So you've got things that you can call upon or habits that you're regularly implementing to allow you to be your best. And I think, that term is sort of be your best self. It can be used quite flippantly and it can be quite idealistic, but it's very, very practical. And I think it's about equipping yourself with your foundations, and something that is referred to. And I think it's also a tool sort of within the apprenticeship documents, is thinking around Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And, what are those tools? What are those fundamental things that you need in order to be your best self? And it can be things around, are you meeting your needs of sleep, nutrition, movement, those real physiological aspects? Because we all know if we've had a terrible night's sleep, we'll still be able to function and carry on the following day, but there's a stressor there, that sort of lug of things are just a little bit more trying to achieve. So at its most basic level, it really is our basic needs as to what we need to do. It's things around, if we're thinking of how we are organizing our time. So there's some very practical elements, and then there's some real sort of supportive elements to our own how we show up. But thinking about, the workloads that you may now have, what you want to gain from this opportunity. And I think so often we have the aspiration of coming on an apprenticeship, of learning, of bettering ourselves. Or equally, it can also be a mutual, in your workplace and career progression, it's the right next step for you. But it's keeping perspective of, ultimately you're here. Why are you here? What is it that you want to gain from this? What is it that's going to help keep you motivated? Those small achievable goals that you're setting yourself throughout can be a really helpful way of keeping in mind, how you are feeling. And if things are starting to get a little bit too much, come back to, okay, well, what is the simplest thing I can do right now just to move me a little bit further forward in my progress? With that in mind as well, that comes very much down to your support system from a people point of view. And it's being able to feel psychologically safe with whoever that might be, whether that is in your team at work, whether it's building relationships within your apprenticeship cohort, speaking to your trainer, speaking to a program manager like myself, anybody within your network, a mentor. But it's being able to have those conversations that when it's feeling a bit tricky, or you're noticing about yourself that, the stress is increasing, you're feeling slightly more pushed and challenged, you're able to get that out. Because we all know, again, from a wellbeing perspective, if we bottle things up, the idea is that we can suppress them. Unfortunately, we can't. We can for a certain time limit. And then, that is then taking us down a whole, a more detrimental route, overwhelm, burnout, etc. So it's really important to find that environment when you feel secure, to be able to have that collaborative conversation, think about, what do you need? How can you be more productive? How can you support that resilience and well-being? So then just it also in terms of thinking about developing habits. So I am a huge well-being advocate. I practice yoga, I teach yoga. And for me, that is very much a movement. You're getting out of your head and into your body, but you are also getting to know yourself. And I think it sounds, from an education point of view and a personal point of view, you're building your support system of knowing how you can be your most optimal. So it's thinking of, if you are getting out in nature, or if you are sort of celebrating what you've done well, what's going well within your apprenticeship. It's this alignment of you're learning and gaining knowledge so that you can move forward from a professional point of view, but you're also being put in a situation where you have a really amazing opportunity to build your foundational skills as an individual, to get to know yourself. And I just think the two can really nicely go hand in hand when you've got your support system that can help you do it.
Brilliant. So some things around, I think you called them physiological things, what we're eating, staying hydrated, fresh air, exercise, looking after our bodies, those being the sort of first base, if you like. And then you talked about the sort of management of tasks, and if in that sort of overwhelmed situation, if you're spotting those signs, perhaps elevated heart rate, not being able to concentrate, maybe feeling clammy.
Absolutely.
In spotting those, in identifying those things, those reactions, natural reactions of our body, to then think about, well, what can I do? What can I break down? And the way that we've designed the apprenticeship programs, they've all got tasks within them, and they're all set out as one file tasks or tasks issued by the tutor in some occasions. Those can help with task management, because it's okay, I'll just open up my account. What's the next thing I need to work on?
Awesome.
But sometimes even that can feel a bit, oh my goodness, there's 5 there. Where do I start? Which is most important? And that's where a conversation with the trainer, with the program manager, or with one of our specialist team can help to unpick, to reset, reprioritize, and
Yeah.
help work out what to do next. So in terms of the support that Capella provides to apprentices, I think we've got lots of experience in helping to navigate that prioritization of tasks,
Yes.
for those who might get a little bit stuck there. And then I think the last part that you talked about, so the physiological, the time management, then the last part that you talked about was that sort of, why is this important? What's the value in me keeping kind of going at this, because it's putting stress in, putting me into a stressful position, and just reminding ourselves of why that's important, and kind of getting perspective around that, I suppose. Is that a fair summary of the sort of
Eh,
main stressors, and how we can manage them?
Yes, absolutely. I think that was yes, a very articulate. Thank you. You probably
Yeah.
consolidated a lot of my information there very well. As well, just to note as well, I think so much of this, and you touched on the support that PMI Capella offer. So much of the work sometimes is we need to understand how we all learn and how we all work. So, having deadlines and tasks in place to aid progress and move forward is great. It helps to keep us on track. The moment where that can be challenging is if that is causing overwhelm, and we have those conversations to chunk it down and to think about how can we better manage someone's time, what needs to happen to aid this. And I think there's a very nice tool that well, there's a couple of tools, if I just touch on them very quickly. One of them is, if we do find ourselves in a situation where we may all have been there at some point, where you almost can't see the wood for the trees, because you just feel, I've got these priorities, I've got these demands from my day job that I've got to get through this week, but then I've also got to attend my training, and you've got the juggle, and that's just professional. We've got our personal lives as well. But there's a nice tool it's called an if-then sort of planning tool, and it just helps to clarify what that focus is. So it's effectively, if something happens, I will do Y. So as an example, if I'm worried that I'm not going to meet this week's task that we've been asked of for our training, then I will speak to my trainer and have a conversation to get some support. So it's almost, you're not getting caught in the problem element of it. You're really trying to look at, okay, well, what's a practical way of moving forward, moving through this, like operating those resilience skills of, I can equip myself. What can I do? What are these scenarios that I can put in place to help me? Linking to that tool and thinking about the scenarios, that support system we've touched on. So thinking around, what do we need to support our mental well-being, our physical well-being, our emotional well-being, is something called the stress bucket, which is quite a familiar tool. That it's very visual as well, which is very, very helpful. But effectively, we have a bucket, which, if you imagine, it's filled with water. The inputs are life events, effectively. So good and bad. It's everything going in, piling in at the top. That bucket will get full. That bucket will topple over. And then what do? We are put in a stressful situation where we've got no mechanism of stopping this flow of input. So thinking about that support system, if we were to punch holes in that stress bucket so the water could seep through, we're relieving and we're almost maintaining a level of input, what would those holes represent? How would they be allowing me? Would it be You know, if you're a physical, you like movement, is it getting up in the morning and going for a walk or doing a strength workout or whatever it might be? Is it checking in with a friend? You know, what are all these tools? Practicing yoga? Is it thinking of what we're doing well? Is it, for me, I love a to-do list. Is it, you know, organizing your to-do list so it's not a stream, but you've got what are your 3 priorities for today? You know, it's really starting to think about how you can join the way you work with how an apprenticeship is structured and finding a rhythm and something that works for you.
Rhythm is a nice word, isn't it? It's to build resilience, to build strength, to build that muscle that you talked about earlier on. That's not about doing it once, is it? That's about regular practice. It's about habit
Yes.
forming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, it really is. And I'm glad you said that specifically. The habits, you know, the takeaways that I'll come on to is having that as your toolkit. You know, you've got things you can call upon when times are really tough, but why wait? You know, what are little things that you can start to implement on a daily basis that just become your norm? And habits are very clever. Our brains are very clever. You know, initially we have to make a conscious effort to do something. These habitual behaviors, you know, have become our norm. We feel like they're a part of us. So taking that idea with new habits that we want to introduce, we might have to set a reminder to get up or do some exercise. We might have to set a reminder to take a break, step away from the laptop. But then when we start to do that on a repeated basis, it becomes an unconscious habit that we just do. So by default, you are supporting your well-being as part of your general day-to-day, rather than seeing it as another thing that you need to add to your list. Because in the long term, when things do get harder, you know, you're time poor, or, you know, you're preparing for your final professional discussion and you want to practice your presentation skills, you know, all of those things, you're building that preparation in advance so that when that time comes, although it may still be stressful, you've got your skills around your resilience to be able to sort of face them in a much so stronger way.
That's really good to think about it in that way, and to recognize that reaching out and asking for help is a step that we can take to grow. It is in itself a positive thing to be doing. It is,
Yes. Yeah.
you know, it's not a I'm struggling, I feel I shouldn't be asking, it feels like I'm asking for help and that means I'm in trouble. Actually, no, this is a really positive step to take. So
Yeah.
really interesting to think about it like that. Okay, so just moving into the final bit then, thinking about takeaways or top tips, what would you share?
Something that's been a bit of a game changer for myself is the realization that resilience is a muscle that think of it like a muscle. It is a skill that you are constantly developing. And I think that goes back to your comment just then around, you know, asking for help and, well, we should know it, or we should know how to deal with this situation. But if you've not been in that situation before, you don't know what you don't know. So I think always sort of keeping that open-mindedness of a new opportunity, you know, reframing that. A coach once said to me that has always stuck with me, every situation is an opportunity for growth. So, you know, bad, good, whatever occurs, there is some learning within that. So it's just keeping that in mind, that being out of your comfort zone can be a really, really great thing, and, you know, develop you in more ways than you're actually here for. You know, it's not just the apprenticeship career progression, it's you as an individual and you as a person. So I'd really sort of hold that to you if you can. There are three things as well, just sort of 3 key takeaways, and coming back to this idea of how we face challenging situations, how we overcome them. So going back to that resilience concept, and we make better decisions, we can be more productive, we're more innovative, when we are calm. So when our nervous system is regulated and, you know, we are thinking logically, we're not in a fight or flight panic stress response. So something I'd offer daily is, just think about what helps you to feel calm. What are those moments where you might feel like you're escalating, or, the days run away with you and you've not got to where you hoped you had? Have that, I'll say it again, have that support system. Think about those things that help to keep you grounded, keep you calm, keep you doing your best work. The next thing, so it is 3 C's, so we can hopefully, remember those. So we've got calm. The next one is stay curious. So it's thinking about, how can you experiment and explore with new ideas? And that goes for thinking about your well-being and what tools you need in your toolkit. But it also goes for the environment that you're in. Thinking of your apprenticeship, be open to that learning and growing. See the challenge and embrace it, not have that fear of, oh gosh, I can't do this. It's like, well, actually, what can I gain from this? What can I take? What can I see from others? What can I share? What can I bring to the table? And then the final one, so we've got calm, curious, and be consistent. So that directly refers to the habits that we've touched on, thinking about what will help you develop your stress bucket, have a think about that, monitor what's coming in. Have you got enough things to help it go out? Have you got that sort of level managed, if you like? And consistently check in with how you feel. We feel different daily. But I think it's not, sometimes if you're not necessarily too emotionally aware, or you just want to simply get the job done, be productive, deliver, it's all valid. But if you're not feeling quite right, then the output will be slightly different. So just be consistent with checking in with yourself and having those habits to support you.
So, Jen, I've loved talking to you today. What resources can we offer to apprentices who might want to reach out and build their support network? What can we do for them?
So from PMI Capella, we have various resources when you are on your apprenticeship journey. We have things around the career journal. We have things around time management. We have various resources that can be accessed through your account platform that you will use once you are enrolled. There's also the conversational piece within program managers, trainers. That direct support can go a very long way. In terms of external resources that I would highly recommend, there are lots of books, lots of podcasts you can delve into. I strongly advocate Mind Charity just to look at for relevant and topical tools. They are very good at sharing tools to use on a day-to-day basis. If you're sort of new to thinking about your well-being and those sort of daily habits, if you look into the well-being pillars, which touches on emotional, physical, mental, etc., that can then start to help you decipher what those daily habits could be and what might help you. There's also a website called Action for Happiness, which again is brilliant for sort of white papers or day-to-day tools. It's all very accessible, and I say white paper and it might put people off, but it's really interesting topical content. So I would very much recommend looking at those as well.
Great. And if learners have found themselves in a position where even all of that feels overwhelming, to pick through websites and search out the things that might be helpful for them, then our team, our program managers, trainers, and our support specialists are all there to lend an extra hand and to help to navigate and to provide that extra strength in that support system.
Definitely. And it can just be a conversation. And I think, something that's often shared is there's no bad questions. So it could be the simplest thing, but you feel like, oh, I don't want to ask that. I should know the answer. Anything like that. That's what we are here for. The program, well, the trainers, fundamentally, the program managers, the DSS support team. we are here to support your success. So it's a case of using us as that resource to aid you wherever needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Because learner success means the success for us too, isn't it? It's
Of course,
definitely
yeah.
a win-win. Yeah,
Yeah.
fabulous. Jen, I've loved talking to you today. Thanks ever so much.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
sure
I've
our
really
learners
enjoyed it.
will. Yeah, I'm sure our learners will find this really, really useful, and those who are supporting learners too. Yeah.